On this edition of City Profile, we will be speaking with the almost brand new Fire Chief of the City of Paducah. Stay with us. Hello and welcome to another edition of City Profile. I'm Tom Butler. And with me today is, I said the almost brand new, and that's kind of right, Fire Chief of the City of Paducah, Steve Kyle. Hello and welcome to the show today. You are into it a month and a half.
Yeah.
And I asked you before the show if you were glad, and you said yes. So that's a good thing.
Yes.
I'm glad that we got a homegrown fella to be in the leader of our fire department here. Sometimes I know that the city wants to look outside of its area to see if there's anything that they like better, and they didn't. And so I think it's a big honor, and congratulations for being selected for this job.
Well, thank you very much. It seemed like it took forever to get here, but this has been my goal I've been aspiring to my entire career. And having spent 11 years here, I couldn't think of any greater honor or greater position to be in as to be the chief here. The city did, I had the opportunity to be the interim fire chief for a while, and I think that provided me a good platform to project myself to the full-time position. So I think there were several things there in place that helped set me up for success to this point, and I just have to maintain the momentum going forward.
So actually you were in the position for how long did you say?
About 7 months.
7 months. So
Yes.
you were the leader in the operations for day-to-day operations for a while before you were actually hired.
Yes, yes.
And I guess that was a learning experience as well.
It was. It was a big transition. Even though I've been in the department a long time, as you change roles, that changes your whole perspective on things, and that 7 months really helped give me a basis for what I thought I wanted to do. Let me conduct an assessment of where I thought the department was, so that when I did get the reins, I'd have a direction on what I wanted to do going forward. And it really did, I think, help prepare me for taking the full-time position.
Now you said you've been in the fire department for 11 years. Mm-hmm. Are you a native Paducahn?
Well, no, not native Paducah. I'm native to the area, though. I'm from Clinton. It's just about 50 miles away, and as most people, whenever you spend time away from there, it's usually here. So I was familiar with the area and with Paducah, and have been here for the last 11 years.
Well, what brought you here initially to apply for the fire department?
Well, that's a little bit of an interesting story. The fire marshal's position is what brought me here originally. As you know, there was some controversy over that position at the time, or you may not remember. But
I remember.
There was some controversy
yes,
at the time.
Remember.
And really, I just applied for the position kind of on a whim. I didn't really think I would get the position. I thought at least it would be good interview experience, and applied the last day. Barely got my application in, and just under the wire. And next thing I know, I'm the fire marshal. So it really is kind of a neat story for me. Not thinking I would even have the opportunity, and look at where I am now. So it really is a nice story for me.
Funny how things work out.
It
sometimes,
is, yes.
Isn't it? Tell me about your family and your other contacts within the area.
Well, I'm married and I have a child that's 16 months old. So that's been a pure joy to have her, and we waited a long time to get her, and she is. And I'm 37, so that's kind of later in life than what you see sometimes when people are having children, and it made me almost think I was too old for it, having to get up in the middle of the night. But it has been a pure joy, and really am excited about having her. But what was it?
Family, and just getting a little background on you.
Well, my family's all local anyway. I've got some family here in Paducah, but my immediate family is all from the Fulton, Clinton area, and so as a result of that, I still spend some time in that area. But they use it as a good excuse to come see me to come to Paducah because everything's here. So we get an opportunity to visit that way.
And I'm assuming you were a firefighter in Clinton?
I was, yes. I started in the fire service when I was 18 years old, and this year is going to mark 20 years for me being in the service, being in the fire service. But I got started right out of high school. Started working full time for the ambulance service and dispatching and an EMT on the ambulance at that time, and was a volunteer firefighter at the time, and maintained all of that even while I was in college at Murray. So I bounced around the area for a little while doing that while I was going to college. And when I got out of college, I went to work for Occupational Safety and Health Administration, the Kentucky offices. Worked there for a while, but my heart was, even though I was in something that complemented the fire service, my heart was always in the fire service. I couldn't get away from it. So the OSHA offices and the state fire marshal's offices were in the same building, and as the fire marshal would probably tell you that was there at the time, he said, I just worried the daylights out of them until they finally hired me. So that's what got me back to the area. I lived in Frankfort at the time when I was working for OSHA, and I finally got into the office down the hall working for the state fire marshal, and that allowed me to come back to this area. And ultimately kind of ended up how I ended here. There was the controversy at the time. The state was doing the inspections inside of Paducah, which was an abnormal thing. It was within my territory, but because of what was going on, we started doing inspections, and that got me introduced to the mayor and the fire chief, and just got them familiar with me. And next thing I know, they've got a job opening, and leads me right to that.
That's interesting. What do you think it is about firefighting and being, one of the things that little kids say when they're growing up, what do you want to be? I want to be a fireman, or I want to be a policeman. What do you think it is about that line of work that is so attractive to people?
Well, I think there's a certain level of excitement that comes with it, and I think it's about helping people. My mom would tell you that her biggest mistake was letting me watch Emergency when I was a child, because once I did that, I never did get away from it. But my whole career, in one form or another, has been about helping people, either through the ambulance service or even on the regulatory side with OSHA and the fire marshal's office. Those are all things about helping people and keeping people safe, and it's all about public service. And I don't really know anything any different. That's what my whole career has been about. I think it's very important. It makes you a part of the community, and you're making a very strong contribution to the community as a part of that line of work. So for me, that's what it's always been about, and has always been my focus.
Well, and now you're the chief.
Yeah.
So the buck stops with you on that. You've been doing it 8.5 months now. What's different about being the chief than it was just being, and I'm not saying just being the guy who went around and inspected and said if the fire marshal, if there were things that were wrong or other things that position had, but what's different now about heading up a department like the Paducah Fire Department?
Probably the biggest thing is I have to have the answers. There's nobody to go ask, necessarily, being the department head now, you're expected to know the answer or to be able to find the answer. And really you're expected to know the answer is kind of the thing that comes out there. But, it's just taking control of that. And I think understanding and knowing that the department's yours. And that and when I say yours, I mean you have the responsibility for it. All of the employees that work for the department are under your care. You're their leader. You're responsible for them, and realizing that responsibility and how you want to, and determining how you want to take care of them, how you want to train them, how you want the department to look in the community, and determining that path forward. And that's a big realization when it finally does kind of settle in, but it's one that I've welcomed and look forward to.
So what do you think you're bringing in now, not to talk about any previous administration or anything, but what things are you bringing to the table now that are new? And if you would just describe for us your management philosophy and how you think that there might be some, if there are some things that you want to change to make the department a better department.
Sure. Well, the fire department is a paramilitary structure. You know, it's all about chain of command and people taking responsibility and having different levels of supervision in it. I believe in several different management styles. You know, that you have to be able to adapt to whatever the environment is. There's going to be times where you're going to give direct orders and you're going to expect those to be followed, and there's not going to be time for discussion. But the other piece of that I think is very beneficial for the employees and for me is those times when we are able to do that. We're able to have that discussion. We've got projects going on. I assign the project to them and let them take ownership of it. And that's one of probably the biggest changes I've made so far. We've got a lot of things that we feel like need to be done in the training world or just in projects or whatever's going on. And I've tried to assign that responsibility widespread throughout the department by getting as much involvement as I can, giving the employees of the department an opportunity to take some ownership of some things. That way they've got buy-in with it. They had a part in molding it and developing it and making it theirs. And I think ultimately that increases morale. We want good, strong morale and camaraderie, and I think that's a part of being able to keep a department moving forward and not getting bogged down and stuck, you know, with unhappy employees. So the biggest change I think in the immediate term that I've made is just involving the employees in things that we have going on. We've made a few committees, you know, and given them an opportunity just to have a say and develop some things and implement some things.
Are you big on training?
Yes, very much so.
I would assume that you are,
Yes.
but talk to me about your feelings about training and having a prepared workforce to deal with whatever situation may come upon us.
Well, the thing that for the fire service, you know, every time you make a fire call, you are in harm's way. Most sane people run out of burning buildings. We run into them, and in order for us to do a good job of that, we have to be well trained. And that is something that I'm kind of a stickler on. I believe we need to practice how we're going to act. And we've slacked off on that some in recent years, and we've been fortunate. We've not gotten anybody injured or hurt or killed as a result of that. And I think that's something we've got to bring back to the front. As recently as yesterday, I talked with the building inspector about houses that are up on the demolition list that we can go in and practice some of our basic skills on. And by the end of this month, I'm hopeful that we'll be practicing some of those. You know, our job's all about teamwork, working together, communicating well, and communications with anything, especially when it's an emergency event, it's always kind of chaotic anyway. Mm-hmm. So you have to really practice things there to keep them from being as minimally chaotic as they can be. Organized chaos is what we call it sometimes.
Well, most people, you mentioned the projects that you have. I think a lot of people think that firemen go in and they go to the station and they wait for something to happen. And you mentioned projects that you are involved in and the department's involved in. Can you talk a little bit about some of those? Just so I know that that's not true, that you don't just go and sleep and eat and do whatever it is until there's a fire.
Right.
There's other things going on, but the average person doesn't really understand that.
No, they don't. And you know, training is one of those things I've got different groups working on now to see what kind of things that they're interested in doing and the areas that they feel we need to focus on. We are, what I've found in some of the critiques from the big responses that we've had recently in the last couple months actually, is that we're no harsher, nobody can be as harsh on us as we are on ourselves. Firefighters, while we've done those critiques, have been very critical of our performance in a constructive manner, and that has identified areas that we need to work on. So what I have done is added people to committees to kind of structure how our training needs to go, giving them some ownership there. We're working on little things like uniforms where I have them involved in the budget, of looking at ways. They're the end users out there with some of our budgetary things, such as supplies that clean the station or laundry or things like that. Giving them a chance for feedback at that. They're doing that. They've showed me some ways to help save some money in our budget, and we're implementing those things now. See, and that's just little things where they're able to make an impact, We've got other policies and procedures that we've had in place for a long time. They're outdated. I've got groups tackling that, having an opportunity to revise some of those things, make them more current with the practices that are more current today. Probably one of the bigger things that I've got going on right now is I've got some of our line staff involved in overhauling the emergency operations plan for the city. And I think once that's done, we'll have an opportunity to really do something impressive with it. Hopefully we'll never need it, but it'll give us an opportunity to be well organized and well trained and very planned out on things that we can do and how we'll react to certain emergencies. And having our staff involved in that, I think, is very important because we're one of the frontline departments that's going to be making those types of responses.
What about education of the citizens? Because I assume that a fire prevented is much better than one that's put out.
Right.
So I know that at one time the fire department was into putting up smoke detectors for the elderly. Still doing those kind of things?
We are still doing those kind of things. We still make the schools regularly. We have a fire safety house that we use to teach them with, get low in smoke and stop, drop, and roll and all those types of things. We do that regularly with them. We have a lot of groups come through the stations to tour the stations, and we'll see the trucks. That gives us an opportunity to get our fire safety message out during those times too. We are also in the process of reaching out more to some of the senior groups than we have in the past. We've done that at intermittent times while I've been there, but we're going to get a little more active with that, particularly with the amount of assisted living facilities that we have, and getting in there and educating them on what they need to do for their emergency plans. If they have a fire in their building, what should they do? Do they stay? Do they go? Where do they go? And then working with the management of those facilities to help them develop their plans so that they've got something good that they can react with.
You still involved with child safety seats? Yes,
we are. We still have car seat technicians scattered throughout the department. We take those calls to get an appointment to have them installed, and usually they'll schedule you for the next day if you call today. What is kind of funny, and people need to realize, you got 9 months to get that seat installed. Don't wait till you're leaving the hospital to try to come get it installed. So while it's a great program, I'd like to encourage parents to take an opportunity before that time. We get a lot of calls like that. That's the reason I want to say that. They call, they're leaving the hospital today, and the hospital won't let them leave without their car seat. So please take that opportunity to get it done ahead of time.
Okay. You mentioned your work with the elderly and in fire safety and stuff like that, and it hasn't been too long since there was a fire at the Jackson House.
That's right.
Tell me a little bit about your plan for that specific building, and I ask about it because of large population of elderly people, tall building, and a lot of those folks may be living on the upper floors. You can't use elevators during a fire.
Right.
So how do you, what's the philosophy on protecting the Jackson House?
Well, there for a while, I didn't know how many tests I was going to get before I made chief. We had that and had the Emmanuel Baptist Church fire right after that. So the city manager told me at the time, he said, "You can stop testing yourself anytime you're ready." And I said, "Yeah, me too." But I believe that incident went well for us and for the facility and the residents, but we identified some things we needed to work on with that. The elevator's not available for the general public, but because there's 2 elevators there, we have access to that elevator as long as it's not actively involved in the fire. And one of the things that we're going through now is helping them rewrite their plan because they have so many elderly and so many people that have limited mobility. We're going to try to evacuate that in sections. That particular day, a lot of the residents did self-evacuate. It was a very tough thing for them to do. It took a long time. We were fortunate that we got the fire knocked out real quick. We did a complete building search, got everybody out. Didn't experience any problems from any of that, but we saw a better way for us to be able to do it in the future. So we've been working very closely with them in redesigning their emergency plan and redesigning our response to that, so that we could be more efficient in how we evacuate them out of the building, or we use other agencies to help us evacuate out of the building. And I'll tell you, that's something else too. We learned very quickly that day, the staff that we have on duty, yes, we are prepared, but you can't have as many staff as you need for every possible event. We were very thankful to the police department and the response that they had in assisting us. The Red Cross got there quickly and assisted us. And we even used PATS and Paducah Independent Schools that day as well. Used their buses for warming centers while we were bringing residents out. So we had a group of agencies there that assisted us, and that's something else as we have trimmed our forces in the last few years and gotten a little leaner in our manpower. We've had to become more creative in how in what we do and how we use other agencies during a time of emergency, and that is something that we're working on to make us even better at.
I don't know if there's any type of technology to help you out with that kind of stuff too, but it seems like if you've got people that can't move very well, the only way to get them down in a situation, if you can't use the elevators to carry them.
That's right, and that's very labor intensive. It
Yeah.
requires a lot of people to be involved in that, and depending on where they might be, it could be very dangerous for us to use outside agencies in that. So that's why we're working hard to make sure we're working smarter, not harder, taking advantages of the building itself and how it's constructed, and buying ourselves some time so that we can stage an evacuation leaving the building. There's just a lot of different things that you have to do, and a lot of planning goes on in that. And it's just something that we had planned for, but not maybe planned as well as we should have. So we're working very hard to make ourselves much better at that. And even though we had a successful response this time, we want an even better response the next.
And you and your department are going to be involved in any kind of, well, of course, fire, but also other disasters. The recent ice storm comes to mind.
Yes.
I know the Public Works Department had a huge job, and they, in a recent interview, told me that the fire department was really a big help during that. What was your role and your department's role in helping out after the ice storm?
Well, we had several stages of response, and that's the only way I know to classify it. The Monday before the storm came, I was set in on a conference call, a weather conference call, and something that we've never done before. We bumped up our staff that night. We started, we're there for 24 hours at a time. The last 12 of the shift, I increased our manning by bringing in some overtime. And I've said this, and I'm going to say it again. If there's one decision I made that probably helped save us in our response, was that extra manning that we put on board. Because the next day, we absolutely got swamped. And had we not had those extra personnel on duty, it would have inhibited our response during that day. We had several structure fires that day. We had responses all over the city. I think we made somewhere between 150 and 160 calls that day.
Wow.
Which is 10 times what we're normally used to. So it was a very labor-intensive day, and that continued over the next 7 days. Now, it did finally drop off some, but that was our first stage, the response stage. That lasted for about 2.5 days. Once the initial response, power was out, we weren't responding to any more things like that, we switched to road clearing phase. You said, well, why would the fire department be doing road clearing? Well, we weren't really doing it for the general public. We were doing it for ourselves, and ambulances and police cars like that. Our trucks all have a chainsaw on them. And as a part of that, we felt it very important that we make sure we had access to all areas of the city. So we have a couple of things that are available to us that help make that easier. We have map books that the drivers study, and they've been broken down by different sections of the city for years. Well, what we did was we assigned them a map book page, and that's what they went out and cleared that day. So we did that for a couple of days. And then while the guys were out there, they were starting to see a need for, people to need to be checked on. We had made some responses with barbecue grills inside the house, kerosene heaters. While they are designed to do some of that, but when you're using it as a primary source of heat, there's extra added danger of carbon monoxide from it as well. You just saw a lot of things going on out there. People that didn't have any heat, some elderly folks that were in crisis. So they came back in and said, hey, we need to switch to welfare operations. We pretty well got things cleared where we can get down the street, so that's what we did. We immediately changed over to welfare checks, partnered up with the police and some other departments in the city that assisted us, and we went straight into going door to door. We were fortunate again that we had those map books, that we assigned a map book page to a group, and that's the area where they went and checked. And they found some real emergencies out there. Found some people that were being exposed to carbon monoxide that needed to be going to the hospital. Found some people that had been in the cold since the event started that needed to get to a shelter. So I very strongly feel that we saved some lives as a result of doing those welfare checks.
Some of the carbon monoxide stories that I heard were generators either in the house or too close to the house. I think you mentioned somebody trying to grill inside, not realizing that propane puts off carbon monoxide as well. At my house, I had a carbon monoxide detector. It's electric. So, that was an area that I needed to look into, and it was, I need something battery powered for something like that, because I was running a gas fireplace, and sometimes those will malfunction as well. What are some other things that you saw that were surprising that people who were just desperate were doing?
Probably the most extreme thing that I saw was the barbecue, or not that I saw, but that our people responded to, was the barbecue grill. They weren't grilling inside; they were using it for heat, and that's not putting off anything but raw carbon monoxide, and there was some serious injuries from the carbon monoxide as a result of that. So that was probably the most extreme thing that I saw. We had heard some other stories about these salamander heaters being used, and those put off carbon monoxide as well. Generators, putting the generator in the garage, and the garage is attached to the house, filling the house up with carbon monoxide. There was just a lot of things out there. And anytime you have a situation such as this, there's going to be some desperate times, I think, but people still have to look into the safety aspect of it. Staying warm is great, but if you don't want to do something that's going to kill you in the process. So you have to really do some research before you just take these things upon yourself. And really, that's what was happening. Safety was kind of out the window. People were kind of getting desperate because they didn't have heat, and not thinking clearly about some of the things, some of the actions they were taking.
We have just over a minute left, and in that final minute, I'd just like for you to look into the next year and give me your goal or two that you would like to accomplish for the fire department, something that you think would be great, even if it's just a manpower issue. What's something you want to do?
Wow. Somebody asked me when I first took this job, what do you want to do in the first 100 days? And I said, the first 100 days, how about the first 365?
Yeah.
Really, we want our training to really be top notch. And while we've had good training, I think up to this point, I think we've got to refocus our efforts. We've got a very aggressive, we have very quick responses, very short time frame that we make responses in, which is good, allows us to catch a fire in an early area. But probably the number one thing I'd like to work on right now is us getting better at that. Take advantage of the quick time, but making sure we're working together collectively as a group. Because firefighter safety is my number one priority, and if I've got them all operating on the same page, that reduces that risk significantly.
Got to be safety for the firefighters and for the citizens.
That's right.
That's why you're here.
That's exactly right.
And I appreciate it.
Thank you.
And thank you for being with us today. And thank you for joining us. We've been talking with Steve Kyle, the brand new chief of the fire department in the city of Paducah. I'm Tom Butler. Thanks for joining us, and join us again next time.